Hello, YouTube. It's Chosen the Destroyer, and gonna be honest, I didn't know Wired had a TV show, or I don't know if it's a TV show. I didn't know Wired did videos. I used to be subscribed to their magazine way back in the day. Anyway, Brennan Lee Mulligan answers DnD questions. I'm gonna be 100% with you. I don't really vibe with D&D. I have tried. It's just kind of not my vibe, my game style. I don't know. So I might be lost. We're gonna see. Grab your snackies, grab your bevies. Let me know what you're eating or drinking down below. Let's get to watching. Oh, no.
Mulligan here to answer your questions from the internet. This is I'm Dungeon Master Brennan Lee Mulligan here to answer your questions from the internet. This is Dungeons & Dragons Support.
Oh, yeah. Akira Lover, thank you for the follow. Welcome.
Okay, first question. Obama Prism VHS, the most iconic, parentheses, famous D&D
What? Okay.
monster. You gotta love a mimic. A monster disguised as a treasure chest. Now, I love these monsters because they only make sense in a world where so many people are going into haunted dungeons that entire strains of monsters can evolve just to eat adventurers. Think about how rare of a food source an adventurer is on Earth, and think about the fact that there's so many monsters out here being like, if I disguise myself as a treasure chest, at least one person a week is gonna open me and I'm gonna eat them. I would say
So, again, I don't know, but okay, so Dungeon Mishi, which is like delicious in Dungeon, made mimics really interesting to me because they made them like hermit crabs. And that's why they're in treasure chests, if that makes sense. And I thought that was like pretty neat.
my favorite D&D monster has to go to the owl bear. Hoot Growl, the mascot of the Eggford Adventuring Academy, and our favorite monster over at Dimension 20. Why would you mix an owl and a bear together? Bears are more dangerous than owls. Just have a regular bear. But no, we made them half owl. Incredible. No notes. This next question comes to us from @SparrowBoy. Is there any secret? How do you come up with such great character design and personality-wise? I always feel empty-headed when having to create a D&D character. The things that not only are fun right away, but stay fun and sustainable along.
My understanding, based on my friends, some of my friends are just like, I want to be the complete opposite of who I am in real life, and I'm actively gonna do that and be that person. Other people are just like, I'm going to be chaos. That is my goal. So, you know, other people just play themselves. Just saying. You know, just whatever your vibes are. I guess you can kind of think about it as like, if you're a VTuber or VTuber fan, there's definitely VTubers that like, they have lore and they play a character, quote unquote. So how do you make an original character? You just make it. You just decide who they're going to be. Who would you want to be in this kind of situation?
Long time are creating characters that are wrestling with a heroic problem that I can keep coming back to. Perhaps their wizarding academy was burned down, or their parents were heroes that were betrayed. Perhaps a war is raging across these 5 kingdoms. Pick someone from one of those kingdoms with something to lose. Not only on a physical level, but an emotional one as well. Pick characters who care about the world they are in, and you will find yourself swept away by adventure very quickly indeed. That's my advice to you. This next question comes to us from @ILoveYourMom3. Provocative. Question, what's the greatest magic of all? Answer, friendship, right? The
Based on memes, Fireball.
greatest magic of all is not friendship, it's chronomancy, the ability to control and warp time.
Okay,
if friendship were the greatest magic, look, it's a pet peeve of mine. Greatest magic of all. Do you remember?
Is friendship.
What the f? is wrong with you? There's a lot of stories out there where the greatest magic of all is love or friendship, and it's like, oh, because you loved so well, it created a magic spell that protected you. That is so cruel to everybody else in that fictional world who died. If your love can magically protect you, then what follows from that is anyone who died didn't love hard enough. It's up. Just think about it for 2 seconds, all right? You can't be doing that.
It's like, oh, that's feel good for you. And you alone. It is feel bad for everybody else.
Greatest magic of all is powerful magic, and you should use that magic to help the people you love. They're not the same thing. Greatest magic of all, chronomancy. At Rogelio Val 123. So exactly, what are the stuff that you need to play Dungeons and Dragons? Do you need to buy separate sets of stuff, or do you make it yourself? Rogelio, my friend, first thing you need is friends, and that's hard to come by, I gotta tell you. The hustle needed to get 6 people to clear a Wednesday night is the stuff of legend. The rules of the game are contained.
I will agree with that, because that was another issue that kind of turned me off to the game. Sorry. It is such a time commitment. And it is so hard, especially as an adult, to get people who are all going to be free on one day for 4 to 5 hours, and that they're not going to cancel every other week. Like, that is so freaking difficult in a way you cannot understand until you try to do something like that. Like, once you try to have a group, once you try to create a group of people, it could be anything. It doesn't even have to be D&D. It could be literally like anime nights or movie nights with friends or whatever. It doesn't matter. It is so hard to get a bunch of adults to have like A, similar schedules to where they can have a specific night off, and B, that they are able to be like, okay, I'm going to be free or dedicate my time to you for 4 to 5 hours every single week on the same day. Like, first of all, I'm busy in general. I get overwhelmed very easily, and I get burnt out pretty easily. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Like, I stream 4 days a week. I have meetings at least once a week. I have 2 days, quote unquote, off. And that is where I jam pack everything else that I cannot do during the week because I am streaming or doing meetings or talking to people or doing work. Like, and those days get filled up by, meetings sometimes or just different stuff because, like, I'm busy throughout the week. So I'm just like, I don't want to dedicate another day to something that's going to take 4 hours of my evening. Like, I just don't want to do that. Sorry. So it can absolutely be exhausting, especially if you're like an introverted person, which I absolutely am. A lot of my, like, being social comes from streaming and talking to chat and stuff like that. That works for me. That does not work for everybody. A lot of people can't don't get their social needs met through online media or forums, I guess. I do. So when it's like, hey, we need to physically go out and go to this person's house for hours and play this role-playing game, I cannot do it. I cannot do it. I don't even want people in my house for that long, I'm going to be honest. Every single week, no thank you. There will be times when I want a week off, but it's at my house, so it can't, or I'm disappointing 5 other people, or like, and the whole feeling of if you do not go, if it's not at your house, even if it's not at your house, if you do not go, you are disappointing 5 other people. Even if it is an online one, which some people started playing online, especially during the pandemic, you are still disappointing like 5 other people if you are just like, hey, I'm not feeling it today. Or, hey, I actually had something come up, or I'm going on vacation, or I have a doctor's appointment, or I don't care. I don't care what it is. You are disappointing 5 other people if you cancel on them. I cannot. Because, like, even, like, movie nights, like, if you have, like, a weekly movie night, if you are like, hey, I can't make it, people will be like, that's a little disappointing, but that's okay. Like, that's fine. We're talking, we're catching up, or we're just watching movies. It's okay. This is more involved, and you are legitimately like disappointing people, is how I feel. I could not deal with it.
In typically 3 books. We refer to them as like the core rule books. Sometimes the Dungeon Master will have those books available for you to come play. Sometimes they'll have them digitally, like on a service like DnD Beyond. Pencil and papers to record your character sheet. This is what a typical character sheet looks like. But you can get these online and print them out for yourselves, or you can store your character information on a digital character sheet as well. And some dice that generate random chance throughout the game. You want to attack a dragon? Well, we don't just decide that. Where's the fun in that? We roll dice to see if you strike true or not. So with dice, pencil and paper, some rule books, and some pals, you could be playing Dungeons and Dragons right away. Now, you may have seen a lot of D&D.
There's also like, I don't know how to explain it. It's basically D&D, but I mean, I guess role play game. I don't know what it's called, but like, it's not D&D, but it's basically D&D, if that makes sense. Where like, there's like, you can run a D&D tabletop role-playing game. Thank you. So a tabletop role-playing game that is based off of freaking, I don't know, DC superheroes, and you can create your own DC superhero or Marvel superhero, or pick a thing, really. Like, it can be different stuff. Yeah, tabletop RPG game. So it doesn't have to be D&D specific. There are a lot of different styles of tabletop RPGs. You can find them, just look them up online. A lot of them. There was a Pokemon one. I tried a Pokemon one at one point, didn't really vibe with it. There's a lot of stuff out there. You can find different things. It doesn't have to be D&D Wizards of the Coast specific, for example.
Tables in popular media with cool little figurines and miniatures like my friends right here. These miniatures are, listen, we can all agree, dope as hell, but they are optional. Miniatures and counters and tokens are there to physically represent battle and combat, but that is technically an extra. You can, at your table, play in a style that is known as theater of the mind. I like to use the minis and the counters because there's a lot of abilities in D&D that are hard to keep track of, and having a battlefield set out, I think, is worthwhile, so that if someone casts a fireball, with one quick glance of my eyes, I know exactly how many enemies just blew up. This dragon has been one of my most long-used miniatures. I think I was like 1 or 2 years old when I got this dragon. He used to have a little spout of fire, but I might have chewed that off when I was a kid. Regardless, this dragon's been with me for a long, long time and served faithfully and well. Good boy. Next question.
You can use literally anything as miniatures. And like, you don't have to have like a very, like, you don't, okay. I feel like this more in maybe Warhammer or something. You don't have to build like really crazy like boards, quote unquote. You could just get a grid board. It could be you could also make one, but like, you can specifically get them a lot of times in like fabric kind of stores or whatever, because they are mostly used for cutting squares for quilting. But it is literally just a board. A lot of times they're cardboard with squares on them, and they're all the same size. You can just use that. There were some friends that I think made one using a whiteboard and paint. Like, they got paint on a whiteboard and they drew lines on it. Might not even have been paint. It could have been like I don't think it was Sharpie. It might have been paint. And they just drew lines on a whiteboard so they could like use a dry erase marker and like mark where things were on the board. So I'm just saying, there's cheaper ways of doing it that will help you visually. I'm a very visual person. Like, I need physical things that I can see. That might also have been some of my issues while playing, because I didn't really have a bunch of physical stuff. But like, anything works.
From Drink Your Haterade on Reddit, what is the best representation of D&D in pop culture? With Stranger Things boosting D&D nostalgia, I've been thinking a lot about pop culture representations of D&D. What show or movie do you think has done the best job and why? I think what Stranger Things did that really helped D&D at a moment when a lot of cultural forces were conspiring to lift it up, and actually showed it as being really fun, inherently social, inherently thrilling, a activity that brings people together in shared storytelling. Baldur's Gate, people got to fall in love with Karlach and Astarion and these amazing characters and trying to smooch, which is a part that they don't write about a lot in the textbooks, but believe me, when you get to play in the game, people want to know if they can smooch. And at my table, as long as all parties involved have talked about it at session 0 and everyone has their thumbs up across the board, if we're gonna be out here slaying and smiting, why not add smooching into the mix? What's so wrong with a nice smooch? I tell you. There was also a D&D movie.
Warhammer 40K is very expensive. Like, I'm just saying. So, and I feel like that's similar. I did go see the D&D movie, and I did enjoy it. Despite the fact that I don't really vibe with D&D, I did really enjoy the D&D movie. I thought it was fun. I would love more of that, I'm gonna be honest.
Movie that came out recently that I think did a very good job. It had the tone and tenor. The worlds of Dungeons and Dragons are these arch, epic fantasy universes, but the experience that most people have playing at the table is that things get goofy. There will be moments of romance, there will be moments of shock and danger and dismay. And so that movie did a good job of showing some of the lightheartedness that exists when you're actually playing through these D&D worlds together. At Buck Ducky, I'm DMing a game for a bit and I'm trying to learn how to make a female
picture
voice for an NPC, but I'm very bad with voices. I think that it's a mistake to try to like pitch up your voice for playing female characters. As a dungeon master, I have to play every different kind of person because I'm playing everybody in the world that my players are going through. Someone told me recently that the characters that I make sound like me, meaning when I voice the character, I just use my regular voice, are women and bad guys. That's something I should unpack with a professional. I don't know why that is, but that's who gets my real voice. I just use my regular voice when I'm playing women. Unless there's like a regional accent or they're older, you know, like if I'm playing the Baba Yagas.
Did someone say a little bit of pigs?
Ancient folkloric Russian witch.
Oh, what?
Where's my pet? You do the voice for the character. I don't think you need to do like a stereotypical woman voice. At JL Moonlight 92 asks, can you tell me how D&D alignments work? How do I know if someone's lawful good or any one of the others? Alignment is an element of tracking player character ideals from earlier editions of the game. It was identified along 2 axes, your ethical and moral axes, and it produced 9 alignments. Lawful good, paladins, heroic, neutral good, most aligned with the good sphere above. Chaotic good, Robin Hood, those that stand against tyranny and oppression and fight for freedom. You have lawful neutral, which is a sort of automaton, rules for their own sake, neither good nor evil. True neutral, no values at all. Kind of cool, cynics maybe. Chaotic neutral, pure chaos for its own sake. Utter rebellion, anarchy. Lawful evil, the alignment of devils and those who seek conquest, tyranny, and oppression. Neutral evil, pure cruelty and oblivion. Chaotic evil, slaughter, rampage, ruin, sort of violence of the demonic realms. Those 9 alignments, people love them because, I don't know if you know this about human beings, they love personality charts. It's stuck around for a long time, even though it's not the most robust way to categorize moral philosophy, but goddamn, people love a chart.
People do be liking charts. I like charts.
It tells them what kind of person they are. From Camille Does D&D, the difference between paladins and warlocks is one's got an employer and the other's got a sugar daddy. But like, which one is which? If anyone's got a sugar daddy, it's clerics. You know it. When we talk about paladins in D&D, we talk about heroic holy knights that swear an oath to an ideal. When we talk about warlocks, we talk about people that have sworn a pact to an otherworldly entity capable of granting them magic. I believe that technically warlocks have the sugar daddy reputation kind of locked down, but I would argue that clerics are in a very similar relationship. I think the difference between a warlock and a cleric is aesthetic more than it is anything sort of more tangible, but that's getting into fantasy, cosmology, and theology, which we simply don't have the time for. At
That seems like a lot.
Sizzleatupkos. Why are wizards so squishy? Why, you want hit points in addition to being able to bend reality with your mind? Wizards are so powerful. They're like the most powerful class in the game. If you can survive those low levels, you're gonna be dominating battlefields from here till the end game. A D6 is fine. I come from 3.5, where they had D4 hit points, and I think we should go back to that.
I don't know what any of that means.
They got it too easy as it is now. D6 hit dice. They should be squishy. Stay on the back line. Let your barbarian have some fun. This next question comes to us from Nui Ren. Among things I don't know, and I'm at this point kind of afraid to ask, don't be afraid. How many sets of dice do D&D players have and why? Do you have separate sets for different characters or for different quests? Or just because they look cool?
6 HP before bonuses to start with level 1. I don't know what that means either. The hit points are between 1 and 6, or in the old edition, it was between 1 and 4. Okay. Let me explain something to you about specifically this question. Not the hit point things. The dice question. If you do anything that people use dice for, you are going to end up with too many goddamn dice. Like, I'm like 100%. You're going to get them because they're satisfyingly pretty clicky clackies. All right. That's it. That is it. I have some blue sandstone dice. Do you know, I don't play D&D. I play Magic the Gathering, and I use them for counters. Like, I just use them to keep track of counters. That's it. That's all I do. And I have like a little set of like red and black, like 6-sided dice, like little mini ones for also counter keeping. Like, it's, you get them because they're pretty or they're satisfying. They're clicky clackies. You're going to end up with too many dice. It doesn't matter. You're just going to do it. Like, you are going to feel, dice goblin, you're going to feel what a goblin feels, or a dragon with a horde. Like, you are going to have a problem. You don't even have to play D&D for that. It's just anything that's like dice, because you're going to, especially if you go to conventions, you're going to go to conventions and there's going to be so many dice sellers. Specifically, if you go to like Dragon Con, there's going to be a bunch of different like dice sellers. And you're going to be like, oh, well, this one's pretty. Oh, they have ones made out of different kinds of rocks and minerals. That's neat. This one's metal and there's cutouts on it. Like, you're just going to keep doing it. You're just going to keep doing it.
Look cool, my friend. Why not have as many as you can? I have an enormous pouch of dice. This is filled with dice. If I'm gonna throw an upcast cone of cold at my adventuring party, I need to have a ton of dice ready for that in the moment, ready to go. As you play the game longer, it actually is worthwhile to invest in more than one set. In your first set of dice, you will get 7 different dice typically. The first and greatest of them all is the D20. We say the letter D for dice, and then the number of sides on the die. So this is a D20 because it's a 20-sided die. Then we come down to the D12. I'm not gonna lie, it doesn't get a lot of action. It's sort of for barbarians.
Yeah, so, okay, sorry. You can use the glass pebbles that they sell at like arts and craft stores and stuff for counters and things, but a lot of my counters like the number increases over time for different reasons. And just having a physical thing with a number on it means there's less shit on my board, if that makes sense. There's less shit on my field. So it's like, instead of having, I don't know, 15 freaking glass beads on a card that now I cannot even see what the card is, I could have, maybe 3 dice flipped to 5, right? That makes sense. Or I could have a D20 sitting on there that says 15. Like, I'm just saying, like, depending on how your counters work, That's it. Like that's just me personally.
Barbarian hit dice, great axes, and not too much else in common play, but we love the D12. Fun fact about the D12, it never stops rolling. These next two dice I'm gonna show together, D10 and another D10, but you'll notice that this one has 2 digits in every place. So you roll these together, and here in the tens digit, you produce a number, so that's an 8, and then in this other digit, you produce a 9, that's an 89. Coming down from the D10, you have the D8. This one sees a lot of play. You're talking long swords and battle axes. There's a lot of cool higher level spells that do D8 damage. That's a real fun one. And then there's one for folks that have been strapped in going, what the hell is this guy talking about? The D6. You know this guy, you love the D6. This is like the normal die. We use the normal die. We're talking about fireball damage, talking about wizard hit dice. I use the D6 for recharging breath weapons, which you always hate to see, but you have to do it. It scares your PCs. It's great, it's fun. You will have these somewhere in your house probably in a normal board game. Maybe you're playing with like a new board game night with friends and someone goes like, pass me the D6. You're like, I caught you. You're a secret TTRPG player. Normal people don't call it a D6, they just call it dice. And then the D4. This one always trips people up because it's got multiple numbers on each side because it lands with its point pointing up and you have to see which numeral is upright. The D4 is the bane of messy housekeepers everywhere because if you let dice fall on the floor and you're walking at night to get a glass of water, this bad boy's going right in your foot like a Lego. I've stepped on these so many times. And additionally, these are used for the smallest numbers possible. So like attacking with a dagger, like the damage of a small knife is a D4. Your D4 will always be the last dice on the table because they're hard to pick up. And so you're there looking foolish, grasping at your hands with these up-pointed dice. Frankly, annoying dice. I find the D4 annoying. I can say that, we have a long relationship, you're not going anywhere. Some of these dice are reliable and their personalities are good, and the D4 is not on that list, sorry to say. Question here from @memeslich, should Dungeon Masters stop fudging dice rolls in Dungeons & Dragons? Fudging a die roll is something that a Dungeon Master can do with the aid of this handy little screen. It's called a Dungeon Master screen. You put that up at the table, and all of a sudden, what am I up to back here? This screen enables you to do really fun
Sus. Nothing good. I don't care. Sus shit.
stuff like this where you go, okay, the monster's gonna attack. Oh no. If you were to see that I rolled a 2 and still hit you, that might prompt you to be like, we need to run away from this battle right now. There's a lot of stuff that is reasonable to stay hidden behind a DM screen. A DM hides their stat blocks behind here. I usually make it this little homebrew index card with all the players' like game stats on it. But there's then a temptation for some DMs to fudge die rolls. Typically this is done to spare the player characters from a terrible fate. You're attacking your PC, it's the last one standing, and they've got 10 hit points left, and you roll that monster attack roll. Oh, it's a nat 20, they're about to do double damage, this is about to be the end of the campaign. Maybe they didn't roll a nat 20, maybe you could say that they rolled something else. That temptation is there for DMs that suddenly get a soft heart for their PCs. @RideTheDirt also just
Or they're jerks and they just want you to die. You know, whichever.
I'm leftist, hell yeah. What is a golden rule you try to follow for #DnD or other #TTRPG for folks at home? That's tabletop role-playing game. The golden rule I try to follow is you're playing with your fellow players, first and foremost. If you follow every rule and stay completely in line with the module, the books are never gonna say thank you. You're playing with other human beings at the table. Stay tapped in to what their experience is. Are they having fun? Are you all telling a story together? That is the measure of a great tabletop game. @PHXMall asks, what's your favorite?
I also feel like you need to be kind of involved because like there's definitely been times when it's like, oh, the DM is really involved. 2 other players are involved. 1 or 2 people look like they're not paying attention and they're just kind of phoning it in when it's their turn and they don't really know what's going on. And 1 person is not there 2/3 of the time. That's not a great time for everyone involved. I don't know.
Favorite character race and class combo for D&D? I tend to come back to Paladin and Wizard. I love a Paladin's oath, striving for honor and justice. We did a photo shoot a while back with wonderful Andrew Max Levy as a
That looks like a fucking painting, dude. Good God, Andrew Max Levy. That is beautiful.
Paladin. Who doesn't love a knight in shining armor? It's a classic hero archetype. And you get to smite Who doesn't love to smite? Give me those D8s. And I also like wizards because they're very magical, but they weren't born that way. They had to work very hard to get magical, and I identify with that. But for the person asking this question of, is there a certain advantage? Typically, there are certain things that dovetail. Like if you're gonna play a barbarian, which is a strength-based class, there are gonna be certain ancestries that give you a bonus to strength in some editions of the game. There's also some fun stuff about playing a character that's a little bit more well-rounded. Every so often it can be cool, even if you're playing a strength-based character, to go,
I would argue, okay, sometimes phoning it in can be funny / chaotic. That's what I do when people do complicated things in Magic the Gathering that I can't keep up with. Okay, Magic the Gathering and D&D are very different though. Like, yes, I will go and play Magic the Gathering with somebody that has a very complicated fucking deck. I have no idea what the fuck they've done. It took them 10 minutes to tell me everything, or to like do their turn, because they're doing 5,000 things and I've lost it. Like, I don't have every card memorized. I don't know what they're doing. So it's like, cool. You don't have to tell me every single thing that you did. Just tell me what I need to know, if that makes sense. Like, you don't have to tell me, like, I put so-and-so, like, I'm swinging with so-and-so, and because of this, he's doing this, and then, no. Tell it to me like I'm 5. Like, cut out all the fat there, okay? And, like, yeah, you can phone it in with Magic the Gathering, like, whatever. Magic the Gathering games are not as long. And they're not as, like, it's not an ongoing storyline. It's not like an ongoing, if your character dies, it dies in the game and you either have to make a new character or leave. Like, it's completely very different. But, like, phoning it in, it's just kind of like, hey, I was not paying attention. I have no idea what's going on in this game that we've been playing for 3 hours, like, today, and 4 or 5 hours every week. Like, I don't really know what we're doing. That is different. Like, that is very, very different. So I just, and also you can have the person, like, your character can have the phoning, quote unquote, phoning it in personality. You still should not be phoning it in. You should be paying attention to what's going on. I don't have the attention span for this. I'm gonna be 100% with you. I don't have the patience, the attention span, the sociability. I don't want to do this. But, like, there are 5 other people there with you. I keep saying like it's a amount of 6. I don't know. But there are like 5 other people that are spending hours of their time trying to have a fun time with you. And you not giving in, like, any energy or any care is going to kind of negatively affect their experience. This is another reason why I don't vibe with it, because it puts a lot of, for me, mental stress on me and expectations. So, like, it feels like they're putting in a lot of work and you're not, if that makes sense. Waka, and yeah, thank you for the follow. Welcome. Yeah, it's collaborative storytelling. So when one of the people is not involved, it hurts the entirety of the group. That is a great way of explaining it. That is just me personally, in my experience or my feelings about it. And it also breaks immersion. That is the other thing. I feel like it's a role-playing thing. I am also weak to role-playing stuff. Like, I'm not strong at that. It is role-playing. You are playing a role-playing game. And for some people, they need that immersion to really enjoy it. And if you're just like, sorry, I wasn't paying attention. What are we doing? Why are we doing this? Like, what did you just do? That completely breaks immersion. And that's not fun for most people.
Oh, and because of this part of my background, I have a weird little cantrip or a magic spell I can do. Even though it might not be optimal, that weird little power that doesn't exactly fit into your build may be the thing that saves you and your friends from a total party kill. At Delusional Do 1, how do you handle a TPK? Do you full reset or just pick up at the last save spot? Any other things you like to do after a party wipe? Handling a TPK, which for folks at home is a total party kill. It is when every member of an adventuring party dies all at once. I think sometimes the best way to handle a TPK is before it happens. If you're heading towards a battle that is absolutely punishing and stands a chance of really wiping out everybody in the party, say it. Say it above the table and say it in game. Have a moment where you check in with your players and go, hey, no shame in running. This has a chance of killing everybody in the party. Take your time. You approach the dungeon. Drums beat in the dark. Fires flicker from torchlight. The smell of death is everywhere. Taking the time to add some gravitas can sometimes wake your players up and go, oh, our buddy is suddenly being very dramatic and serious. I think we might be in trouble. If you do all that due diligence and say, hey, you can make a brave last stand here, you all may die. When they do, they had some agency in it. The thing that makes a TPK really unbearable is when players feel like it happened for no reason. At Sessions Canceled, why do we always start games in tavern? Some groups tend to make their characters isolated from one another. Where do people congregate? In a medieval setting, in a public house, in a place of drink and libation and revelry. I would say probably there's a deeper answer here, and I haven't seen anything written about this, but I would hazard a guess that it is in maybe unconscious homage to the Inn of the Prancing Pony in Bree, where Strider first meets the hobbits in Lord of the Rings, which is a seminal text and serves as the basis for a lot of the lore within Dungeons and Dragons.
I wonder if that's just an ongoing theme in a lot of fantasy settings anyway. Like, did it legitimately originate kind of in like Lord of the Rings-ish, or did it originate elsewhere? That's interesting. That is an interesting thought. D&D pet peeves is I hate it when I pay for lunch for the 100th whatever time. First of all, no hate. We now live in a land of like DoorDash and Uber Eats and shit like that. We live in delivery land now. You can order your own fucking meal and pay for it and bring it over, like have it delivered to wherever the fuck you are. Sorry. And because like, and the only reason I say that is if you're going to do this thing, you should take turns buying food for everybody. Even if it's like, hey, on D&D nights, we eat pizza. Like we eat pizza on D&D nights, and then we take turns on who is buying the pizza, and we order like the same fucking thing every week or whatever. But you should take turns. Whatever it is, you should take, like, whatever food thing you have, you should either take turns or take care of yourselves. Like, I'm not saying you can't bring treats in, like, hey guys, I brought donuts or whatever. You can do that, but like legitimate food you should either eat beforehand, or if you're going to eat during, you should either take care of yourselves, or you have agreed upon like thing that you guys do and you take turns, or like everybody chips in. Like, that's just me personally, as someone who handles a lot of group things. If it's a new group, don't assume there will be food. Ask how they do food. Yeah, that's fair.
Next question comes to us from @RottenWork. Does anyone have any tips for a first-time DM? I'm having my first session 0 for a campaign tomorrow, and I am nervous, LOL. First of all, laughter will help, so I'm glad that you're lolling. Second of all, you're doing a session 0? My friend, you're way ahead of the curve. Session 0, for those who don't know, is a pre-campaign session where DMs will line up. Sometimes people will do character creation there. Sometimes that happens beforehand, and the session 0 is just to line up what the adventure is going to be about, any rules of engagement. So the fact that you have got your situation buttoned up enough that you're doing a session 0, you're off to a great start. Second of all, tips. What's the nugget? Brennan, what's the secret little sauce? There's not one. You gotta slug it out like the rest of us. You gotta get your hands dirty. You gotta jump in 2 boots first and run the game. Is your first session gonna be clean? Are you gonna remember every rule? Are you gonna nail every NPC? Maybe yes, maybe no, but the point is this: your first session is the learning experience. You're gonna jump in and you're gonna learn so much more in that first session than any internet learns so.
Is this a dry erase board? I don't know. It might not be, but it might be. This is what I'm talking about, though. You just need a grid board. Dry erase will make it very much more reusable. I've also seen people make them out of, I said, dry erase boards, but also plexiglass. You can go buy a sheet of plexiglass from like Home Depot or Lowe's and make your own. You can even use tape on the underside of it. You can go buy really thin tape. That does exist. First of all, like scrapbooking, but like also you can just get really thin tape, or tape it and like spray paint it for lines or whatever. Either way, you can very easily make your own grid board out of various things, or use cardboard. But like if you want something that's reusable, like you want to put money into it and just reuse it, plexiglass or a dry erase board. I feel like plexiglass could be easier. You could use Sharpie on the bottom of the plexiglass, and then you don't run the risk of accidentally wiping it away if you use dry erase markers. I'm just saying. That is a thing. And Chessex makes one. Neat. Okay. Sheriff Snorlax, thanks for the follow. Welcome.
So much more in that first session than any internet dungeon master could tell you. That being said, the answers lie in your players. Just listen to them, tap into what is bringing them joy, and you will do wonders, my friend. Rooting for you. This one's from @Gary26817438. 26 million and some odd Garys before this one. What in the world is a critical roll? Don't you mean a nat 20? You're thinking of a critical hit. A nat 20 is the highest possible roll on a 20-sided die. When you get that nat 20.
I think he's referencing like Critical Role, the D&D little podcast show thingy.
Roll. On an attack roll, it's an automatic hit and it deals double damage. Thrilling. Most DMs, and I would say the fun ones, not to put myself on one side of a fence, will homebrew that a nat 20 is also an automatic success on a skill check. Now, this does certain things to game balance. The game rules as written does not say that a nat 1 is an automatic failure or a nat 20 is an automatic success. But I am part of a camp of dungeon masters that believe if the possibility for success or failure does not exist on a given roll, why are you asking for it in the first place? Just say it's impossible. If you're gonna ask someone to roll a die and they roll a nat 20 and they still don't succeed, it doesn't feel very good. And we're here to feel good, so. This next question is from Andy Doodle56. Question for #Dungeon Masters. If D&D is improv, in parentheses, yes and, with dice, what do you do when the dice really don't want to tell the same story that you do? There's a great expression, which is that the dice tell the story. You're taking a D20, you're rolling it. It's the most climactic roll of the campaign. I attack and get an 11. I needed a 19 or higher. I missed my opportunity. Perhaps I will be struck down the mountainside here. Your job as a dungeon master is to immediately start to think about what the story beat is that accompanies failure. Failure is not anathema to storytelling. Failure is a key and critical component of storytelling. Downbeats, moments of ruin and wrath, these are what drive heroes on to greater and greater ends. The reason we play with these dice is so that we can surrender control. Maybe this isn't the big heroic victory you thought it was. Maybe this is actually a setback. @Wild Magic Surge, what's your favorite D&D 5e spell? Oh man, is it Shield? I love Shield. It's just really fun. Reaction, +5 to your armor class. I think favorite D&D 5e spell, Fireball, Fly, they're all good. I will say this, 3rd level is the best spell level. All the most fun spells are 3rd level spells. @Lee, 51,765,627. I want to learn to play Dungeons and Dragons. How do I find people willing to play with a newbie? Lee, I love playing with newbies.
That is difficult. The only I mean, he's going to say something, but like the only advice I can give is I don't know, maybe go to a game shop, because sometimes there will be groups there, but that's difficult. I don't know. Ask your friends if you have friends. Oh god, how do you find a group in 2025? Because I could say like, I don't know, maybe look around like Facebook or Facebook groups or something like that, but now people don't use that. So online, but we're online. You're just saying online. That's not helpful. We're online. Do you look? Game shops have a thing called Adventure League that's official D&D and very newbie friendly. Nice. Sometimes conventions do have one shots. D&D Beyond has a matchmaker. Hobby shops or at a con. Meetup groups. Reddit, Roll20, etc. All right.
Playing with newbies is the best, but you are right. It is hard to find a group to play with. I think the best thing to do, honestly, is if you have people you're close with, you have a group of friends, all learn the game together. It doesn't matter if you're stumbling through it. It doesn't matter if it feels arcane or Byzantine or it's hard to get through. The important thing is you're spending time with people you care about and you love. If the crew around you, if your friends and network aren't as interested in tabletop games as you are, frequenting game nights at your local game store, have game nights where you can come and meet people and join a table. And there's also services online to find physical but also digital play groups. So Start Playing Games is a company that serves as a sort of matchmaker to not only hook people up with other people to play with, but also dungeon masters. Matching services for dungeon masters that charge for their services. There's free dungeon masters, there's free groups that get together there. All these things are available for you at your disposal. So there's a range of options, but yes, it is a challenge, but there
You don't have to go outside. Apparently, you can do it online.
are ways to do it. Here's one from Bex Schwartz on Blue Sky. Thanks, Bex. Hi, intrepid hero Brennan Lee Mulligan. How does your prep for an adventure in someone else's campaign, such as Exandria and Critical Role's Calamity, differ from your preparation for the Worlds Beyond Number that you are building? Thank you for the question, Bex. I deeply appreciate it.
Don't
Shout
understand
out to
that
Worlds
question.
Beyond Number, the podcast that I do with Bria Iyengar, Erica Ishii, and Lou Wilson, edited by Taylor Moore. I was fortunate enough to get invited to come and run a series in Exandria for Critical Role as a part of their Exandria Unlimited series. Basically, whenever they need someone to crash a flying city somewhere in the history of Exandria, Matt calls me up, they light the little bat signal, and I come in and make everybody sad. At the core of your question is, how do you create your own world from scratch versus how do you create a meaningful story in a world created by someone else? Creating the homebrew world of Umora from scratch for this epic fantasy podcast to stepping into Exandria, the incredible world of Matt Mercer and Critical Role that has been established over now 3 full campaigns and adapted into the Legend of Vox Machina animated shows. Pick your poison, right? A lot of DMs rely on pre-published modules. Exandria has incredible source books that give a DM the tools to jump into an established and exhaustively beautiful and rich fantasy world to just start telling your story in it. Other DMs actually sort of tend towards wanting to create from homebrew themselves, wanting to make their own setting and to be sort of the ultimate authority on where that world was and what was going to be going on in it. The prep is very different and they're both wonderful. Short answer is
So my feelings about this is I feel like no, it's not really. So some people are able to create their own worlds completely from scratch. I mean writers, for example, right? We talked about J.R.R. Tolkien earlier, like creating a world and how it works and etc., right? What I'm gonna say, you guys are gonna be like, of course. So other people are able to use what other people have created, such as other worlds, and make their own storyline within it. An example is fan fiction. Like fandom works are an example of this. I just want to throw this out there. So maybe you are thinking too hard about it. I'm just going to be 100% with you. Maybe you are nervous or just hardcore thinking about it too hard. If you know the world if you know kind of the universe that you're stepping into, the realm that you're stepping into, kind of how things work, maybe some history of it, you just create an original character that exists within that world. I just think of it as like a fan fiction. Like, I'm sorry. That's how I kind of, you know, again, I've mentioned this before. I try to put a lot of logic on things because that's how I understand the world that I live in. And I'm doing React content, so that doesn't always work. But this is kind of me logicking things like, hey, some people are fully able to create a very interesting realm with very interesting characters and stuff, and some people are able to take that and create a different thing with it. And I feel like that's a lot of where fandom comes from. So like, or where fandom works, I should say, come from. So I just think of it kind of like that, I guess. The difference is fan fiction is fake. When you guess DM, everything you create becomes real. So imagine because Poison Apple was now Blizzard was able to include that in Call of Duty 4. Sure, I guess, but like, here's the thing. I don't know how true this is. He's gonna talk about it again. I'm not a DM. I'm not able to play this game. Are these styles of games. Guest DMs, like, yeah, everything kind of becomes true in this world, but that also means like, hey, yeah, maybe you just need to be kind of respectful. You need to play within the world that was created. You need to understand kind of the world in which was created. You can't just be like, hey, gravity works this way, but because I'm here, I've decided gravity now does not work, or gravity doesn't work the way it used to, or whatever, without giving meaning. That's the other thing. You can do stuff, but give meaning. You can have maybe an evil wizard that has changed how gravity works in this area, or whatever. I don't care. You have to give meaning to why things are different, based on what was already established. And also, anything that doesn't vibe or does not work, hey, you find out at the end you were put under a spell and this was all a hallucination or a nightmare or whatever. You can clean up after yourself. It's not, to me, it's not that deep. I mean, I'm sure for some people that actually play this game and are able to get into it, it is that deep, but that's just me personally. And you can contact, someone said like you can contact the main DM or like the guest DM can pitch ideas to the main DM beforehand to make sure that they're not like causing issues or whatever. But also, if someone is inviting you to do this, like, I assume they have trust that you're not going to wreck their shit. And if you do wreck their shit, like, have some fail safes, or there might already be fail safes in place, such as, hey, this kind of broke the reality, so we have to give an excuse that doesn't break the reality. Like, it was a dream. It was a hallucination. The bad guy caused this for whatever reason, and it was an isolated incident, and now it's over. Like, stuff. I don't know.
Was and what was going to be going on in it. The prep is very different and they're both wonderful. Short answer is the world itself wanting to make their own setting and to be sort of the ultimate authority on where that world was and what was going to be going on in it. The prep is very different and they're both wonderful. Short answer is you got to do a lot more reading for this one. And in this one, you got to do a lot more writing. There's something really beautiful and delightful about writing fiction in someone else's setting.
There you go! Writing fiction in someone else's setting.
Someone now who's writing a Star Wars show is someone who grew up probably loving Star Wars. So there's an amazing...
We hope. I don't know how true that is based on some of the shit that's coming out lately.
Focus on coming to something that you are a fan of and getting to light a little candle in that world. At Flora Rune, a question for D&D and TTRPG friends. What is your favorite magical item? The immovable rod! Small metal wand that has a button on it, and when you click it, it cannot be moved in space. That might sound trivial. The amount of shenanigans people get up to clicking it to fly, like jumping up like an acrobat. Someone was on an airship being chased by another airship, leaned off the back, clicked it, and left it in the air. And then you have to decide what happens when an airship collides with a ruler-sized bar of metal that cannot be moved no matter what. Chaos, the immovable rod. This next one's from Brycing Wolf on Reddit. What common D&D related behavior or quirk really grinds your gears? Mine is when people call the fighter class the warrior or call the wizard the mage. Not even sure why, but it makes me hate you a little. Brycing Wolf, do not give in to hate. They know not what they do. I think for me, probably the biggest pet peeve has to do with a player making a choice as a character that really grinds the adventure to a halt. I think sometimes people will hide behind the sort of lens of it's what my character would do, and will do things that are a little bit antisocial at the table. And ultimately, there's not that much a dungeon master can do if you decide that your character wouldn't go on an adventure. If a DM comes out and says, your village is in danger, your loved ones are in jeopardy, the fate of the world hangs in the balance, and you alone hold the sword of destiny. And you go, I run, I'm getting out of Dodge, good luck. Well, that's kind of the story over.
Oh no, that's me. I simply would not be in this situation. I just got called out. What is it? Refusal of the call? Hi. I would be refusal of the call impersonated. Like... No thanks. That's how I should be in every I get dragged to a D&D campaign. I'm just like, no thanks. I'm out. I'm just, no, I'm just gonna stay in the tavern. It's fine. No thank you. And I move. I leave. I wait till they walk out and I go somewhere else. Well, time to move towns. Which direction were they going? I gotta move in the opposite direction.
Actually, I am incorrect. What's your favorite weird niche bit of lore that isn't fully developed? D&D created a cosmology for the afterlife called Planescape. And it made it really, really weird because they never kind of thought you were gonna go there. And then
Oh, Kamikuro, thanks for the
they
follow.
built an edition that was actually set there. An infinite tower arises and ends in a torus of stone, like a big stone donut. On the inside rim of that donut is the city of Sigil, and within Sigil there is a lady of pain who has forbade all gods from entering that city, and her servants are known as the Dabus. Tony DiTerlizzi, the original illustrator for them, I always think of them as big, tall, white-haired Who's from Whoville, and they speak through emoji. They make little weird hieroglyphs out of light over their heads that only the Dabus can read. I think about them every day. What a crazy bit of lore. At Aiden Lair says, why did people think playing D&D was satanic? You're literally fighting Hellspawn half the time. That's a great question, Aiden. There's sort of two answers to this. One is D&D, by involving elements of folklore and mythology, had elements of things adjacent to the occult. There's a deeper answer, which is that back in the 1980s, it was like evangelical moral panic about that. But really, the evangelical right in this country needs to manufacture outrage to hold onto its voting bloc. So
Matthew, thanks for the follow-up.
that's your real answer. It was arbitrary, as the targets of their outrage always are. Fight the power. Are you gonna include that? This next question comes to us from Shuffleupagus. I wonder how much prep a DM like #Brennan Lee Mulligan does. Like, what do his notes look like? My notes are garbage. I have terrible notes. My 14-year home game that I ran The system I had for how to manage the lore was at the end of 14 years, 412 page indecipherable Google Doc. Paragraphs of lore interspersed with
14 years. Jesus.
Random initiative counts unlabeled as to what battle they referenced. Terrible stuff. So if there is any part of you that doubts your abilities as a GM based on having seen a GM out there in the world with like an incredible digital spreadsheet, or I know DMs whose prep work is flawless. Matt Mercer rolls up to the table with stapled sheets of paper with all of the lore of the setting. And I got like a bullet point list on a Google Doc and a wish and a prayer. And that's about it. I rely a lot on improvisation. That stresses some DMs out. Other people rely a lot on preparation. That stresses other DMs out. Find your style that's right for you. It brings the most joy to your players and your table. This one's from @YumDM. How many different editions of D&D do you actively play? I play most actively 5e. Up until last year, I was also playing 3.5 extremely actively. There are many editions of the game. I came into the game playing 2nd edition. You want to talk about crunch? Come talk to me about Thaco, baby, to hit armor class 0. Imagine a 10-year-old boy with 2 sliding sheets of graph paper to align a set of negative integers with the value of a die roll. That required some math. Negative numbers are good, tough. However, there are also many other games aside from D&D that I play. Other big ones like Vampire the Masquerade, Call of Cthulhu, Blades in the Dark. My friend Jay Dragon does Wanderhome and Yezeba's Bed and Breakfast. There's great indie games out there for anyone who is like, oh, I've had a taste of heroic fantasy and playing Dungeons and Dragons, but I want a sci-fi experience, or I want a more poetic experience, or an even crunchier experience. The world of tabletop role-playing games awaits you. This next one comes to us from @Warforged Dice. D&D players, how do we feel about the new D&D rules / mechanics? Hey, I hear you. I know that we love.
I really feel like every time a new version comes out, people are mad, and it doesn't matter. People are always going to be mad. People don't like change. Like 100% not a fan of change. It doesn't matter. Like, I am waiting for Marvel Rivals to have to patch something away and for people to lose their shit about it. Because that's kind of what happened with Overwatch, right? Like, Overwatch keeps patching things and changing things. So, and for a lot of people, it like ruined the game for them. So and it made it less fun, right? So like I'm just waiting for the same thing to happen to Marvel Rivals. Like, I expect it to happen. I could be wrong. It might never happen. I don't know, but I'm just kind of like waiting. I'm still playing the game, not streaming it because my computer won't let me stream it and play at the same time for whatever reason. But I'm suspicious, right? The newest D&D version is extra bad because they didn't make a new one, but also didn't really keep it the same either. It's hard to explain. I don't know. 2E and 2E to 3E were very well received. Okay, I just really feel like... I think it's more that the core books are about 1,000 pages of content, and people gloss over the 990 pages of changes they like and go laser hard on the 10 pages that they have legitimate hatred towards. This isn't just me personally. I just think people hate change. And like, you're not going to make everyone happy. It is entirely impossible. It's never going to happen. You are never going to make everybody happy. So especially with something that is as long running as something like D&D is, because they do keep coming out with new books and new stories and new like changes and stuff like that. They kind of, I don't know if they necessarily need to, but like to kind of keep, like they keep needing to refresh stuff, right? We see the same thing in video games. For those who don't play tabletop RPGs or Dungeons and Dragons, we see I keep going back to kind of like Overwatch, but like in general, video games that are like long running, ongoing games, had the same thing. I mean, they don't need to, but they need to in order to profit as a business, right? But, you know, you keep releasing things and people are going to be unhappy with some of the things that you release. Like that's just life.
So much of the old way the game was played. The changes to Counterspell and to Divine Smite. Ask yourself this. If you were making a wizard or a paladin, were you allowed to do anything other than those abilities? No, you were not. Counterspell needed to be altered a little bit. Divine Smite needed to be altered a little bit. Every damage dealing build that was a super damage dealer had to involve Divine Smite. It was mandatory. Counterspell, mandatory. And anytime an ability in a game is mandatory, you have to ask yourself if it's a little bit out of balance. And the druids, letting them talk in wild shape? Yes, let them talk. I always want them to be able to talk in wild shape. That's a rule that just helps DMs out. When is it ever helpful for someone to not be able to speak? It's never helpful. Let the druids talk. I want that dog to talk. At not have it. Okay, but what if I said I wanted to play a Wild West setting D&D campaign? What then? We've played in many, many different kinds of settings and genres all across the spectrum. We have Fantasy High, where we play D&D in a high school for fantasy heroes. We play The Unsleeping City. At Madison Square Garden is a live show. We're playing D&D at the Garden in New York City because The Unsleeping City is set in a magical version of New York City. We even played a Starstruck Odyssey set in the sci-fi setting of Anarch era, written by noted comics author Elaine Lee, also my mom, if you can believe that. I adapted my mom's comic book series into a D&D campaign. There's a lot of people who enjoy home brewing and stretching the creative boundaries, chop shopping or jury rigging what they want their game to be about. Everyone has a different playstyle and all are valid and good. At Dickie Minaj. So there's a drag queen show and I'm just finding out about this. Yes, you can come over to dropout.tv where we play a miniseries called Dungeons and Drag Queens.
Say hi, questing queens.
Hi, questing queens.
With some of the best drag performers in the world, Bob the Drag Queen, Alaska Thunder, Juju B, and Monet Exchange, who are so wonderful and incredible players and had the bravery and the chutzpah to sit down and play D&D for the first time on camera with me. They were phenomenal. The number one thing that you want to look for in a new player is how much they care and how invested they are. And all of them went into it with their full heart and were just naturals right away. Took to the game so effortlessly. It was a joy and a privilege to behold. The next one comes to us from Bug Hop D. My son just asked.
I just want to say, like, that's another thing. This is back to kind of like DM and like group questions. There's definitely a time you're going to experience where you don't vibe with one of the other players in the group, whether you're a DM or you're a player. And that just comes down to play styles. Like their play style might be very, very different than your play style or the play style of the other people in the group. And that it does not mesh well. That is definitely something. And I feel like it hits DMs a little harder than it does just the group, like the players. Where like a DM will have a hard time kind of like getting things rolling or getting things going or whatever because they are not meshing well with one of the players or one of the players isn't meshing well with the story at large or whatever. So I just, that is like a thing. I just be aware. Like as a real world example, I have people that I'm 100% friends with that I cannot travel with. Like that's just a thing. Like I cannot travel with them because of how they are when they travel. That's just, you know, sometimes it'd be like that. Or like, I have people that I'm friends with that I probably wouldn't cosplay with just because like I'm extremely laid back. This is actually, I say wouldn't cosplay with. I kind of stopped being as into cosplay or as like uptight about it. I don't know. Like for me, I was never trying to make a career out of it. So it's kind of just like, I'm just trying to do this for fun, which means I have different goals in here than maybe someone else. And so it's like, hey, we were cosplaying together and kind of now we're not because like I'm really laid back about this and you're kind of not. And that's totally fine. You know? DMs, regardless of if they want to or not, have to play adult and referee, not only in game but also between players, because even adults can run into personal issues, and for some reason, it becomes the DM's job to resolve and mediate. Session 0 is usually to resolve those things. Spent full years running Vampire the Masquerade one shots for newbies purely to draft a dream team of perfect players with ideal schedules. It's real rough, but it can be so wonderful when you get that group. Yeah, that's legitimate. Like, I've had D&D played at my house before, and it can be drama, right? I have hung out with a friend where D&D was being played by the rest of her roommates in the living room, and then, the DM getting super mad at us because we're in her bedroom, by the way, watching anime and like laughing about something that's happening because we're watching a funny show, and him coming in and berating us for being too loud. Like, we weren't yelling, we weren't screaming, we were just watching a show and laughing about it, but we were being too loud and disruptive while they were playing D&D in like the living room. Like, that's it, it happens, right? Like, sometimes you don't vibe with the group, sometimes you vibe with the group outside of, say, a tabletop RPG game. Someone who legit spent 2 hours of my night last night having a sit-down meeting with 4 people, all 40 plus, about how important it is to be respectful to each other and communicate, because we're all friends here and it's easy to take each other for granted. So let's focus on being respectful of each other's time. Yeah. Yeah. Like, it's, for some people, they get really uptight about it in the game setting. And you're just like, hey, I don't like this. I'm here for kind of lighthearted fun, and you are making this too serious. There are some people that are going to take the game too seriously and don't want the fun, lighthearted aspect of it, and get mad if you try to bring in the fun, lighthearted aspect of it, because for them it is a very serious, or their character is playing a very serious game. So anytime you're trying to be silly, their character, quote unquote, gets mad and like berates you, and that just kind of ruins your fun. Like, that kind of shit happens. Like, I'm just straight up, it happens. So it's just kind of like, okay, that's just something to be aware of, I guess. Don't go in and thinking it's immediately going to be a perfect fit. It might be, and I'm happy for you if it does. But just be aware sometimes it's not. It's sometimes it takes a while to find the group or the people that you mesh with really well. Hello?
Asked a D&D question I don't know how to answer. What does a mimic look like when it's not mimicking? In their natural state, mimics appear as amorphous shapes with speckled gray skin, similar in appearance to granite. But since they are such shape-changing extraordinaires, you'll rarely encounter one in its regular form. Mimics are shape changers, much like doppelgangers. We had a mimic in our high school for heroes setting, Fantasy High, that looked like a standard examination room desk. I like to imagine that they have a penchant for disguising themselves exclusively as furniture. So, those are all our questions for today. I'm wishing all the best to you and your table. May all your hits be crits, and I hope you learned a lot here about the wonderful world of tabletop role-playing games. From here at DnD Support, Brennan Lee Mulligan, signing off.
Hey, there you go. I just realized, like, this was 33 minutes. I've been recording for over an hour. I really was worried that I wasn't going to have anything to say, and then I was like, right, I have had D&D experiences. And I have friends that play D&D. Let me give you my opinion and things that I have observed. So, I mean, it's my understanding is tabletop RPGs. It's not even just tabletop RPGs, really, but because tabletop RPGs are such a long, ongoing thing that is very much like you have to dedicate time to on a like weekly or whatever basis. It can be very difficult if you don't mesh with certain people within the group that you're playing with. Um, like, also life also happens. And by that I mean, like I mentioned before, like, maybe you're burnt out. Maybe you have a family obligation that you need to do. Maybe something comes up. You can't show up for that week. What if your character is pinnacle for doing something that play session that week? What do the rest of them do? Do they just try to play without you? What is happening to your character while they're playing without you? Like, there was like, I know some people, yeah, like, I guess you can do like a side quest, like, okay, pause side quest thing, but like, that's something you have to be prepared for or think up on the fly and that kind of stuff. Like, varying options do exist, varying by group, I know. But like, what if every fucking week someone isn't showing up? Back to back to back to back. Because I've definitely been involved in a game like that where like someone just kept canceling like day of or last minute. And it's like, cool, we're never going to be able to go forward. And when it's like, hey, do you just want to drop out? It's like, no, I don't. I'm going to come back. But then they would come back once and then like, and that's how they like those groups crumble, right? So it's like, okay, this campaign is just kind of, it's dead. Like we can't, like it's dead. Like we can either play they go away and we play with who's here, which is fine. But then kind of like the vibe is set off, right? Like the vibe is off now. Or just like one week it's player A, and then the next week everyone's there, and then the week after that player B's gone. And the week after that player C and D are gone. Like, like it's like a lot. It's especially like as an adult, like it's hard to get everybody together and it's hard to make them stay committed. And because life happens and sometimes you don't have control of things, like people are going to miss stuff. So you have to have a plan on missing stuff. Are you going to be able to continue with this on for however many weeks or months or whatever it's needed to complete? That kind of thing. I don't know. I just cannot with that kind of thing, to be entirely honest. I'm too busy. I can't dedicate that amount of time. The real fantasy setting is everyone always showing up for a session. Oh no, Rebecca got thralled by a vampire. Time for someone to roll a new character. Awesome side quest. Sad about Rebecca. I guess. Anyway, if you guys enjoy D&D and you're legitimately having fun and you don't have any real issues or any issues that you do encounter, like you're able to like deal with it and everybody's happy, I'm so happy for you. This is just something I can't personally get into. I have like a lot of mental blockage about it just because like personality, how busy I am, how much of a time dedication it is. I don't want to have to plan another damn thing, to be entirely honest with you. That kind of thing. That's just me personally. I also don't want people in my house for like over 5 hours because it was like all night. Like I personally don't want a bunch of people in my house doing that. So that's just me. I get kind of like peopled out and I like being comfortable, which is not, sometimes me being comfortable is not for other random people to see, if that makes any sense, clothing wise. So anyway, it's just my opinion. Wow.